and welcome back to Sports Today. So, we bring you this video every single morning, every single day of the week to update you with a lot of things that may have been happening in the world of sport whilst you were catching up on some all-important rest. We know for a fact that the world of sport doesn't rest, which is why we bring you this video where we bring you some rather interesting things that have been taking place whilst you're, of course, catching up on some sleep. So, without further ado, let's get straight to it. And it's important we start off by talking about the two matches that we witnessed yesterday in the IPL. Of course, Rajasthan Royals were thrashed horribly by RCB, and we'll get to that match first because what it does is not only does it keep RCB's hopes of qualifying for the playoffs very much in their own hands, but it also potentially brings in the chance of an RCB LSG match in the playoffs. That's because LSG, of course, are very much up there in the race for the playoffs as well. And if you're lucky, you could very well be seeing them face off in either the eliminator or potentially even the qualifier, maybe the finals. One way or another, it is indeed possible that you could see that match. And it's something that LSG and RCB fans are very, very aware of. And in fact, LSG kind of stoked the fire a little bit by tweeting about, or just tweeting with three very simple alphabets after RCB had picked up that victory against the Rajasthan Royals. What were those three alphabets? RCB. And they tweeted it along with the emoji where, they're making this hand sign as well as the eyes, which means they're keeping an eye on RCB's progress through, of course, the playoff or in the race for the playoffs. Now, again, we've seen two very heated encounters between both of these sides so far in this particular season. And if you happen to see another one, especially in the knockouts, where it'll be basically, win and you're into the let's say finals or maybe even in the final, it will be an electric affair, to put it politely, if that does happen. And I'm sure that there are a lot of fans, even neutral fans, who would in fact be wanting that to happen. Of course, whether or not it does is not entirely in the control of a lot of franchises. Truth be told, there's plenty of that can happen. It's the last week of the group stages and there's a lot that could still happen. Plenty of moving parts there, but wouldn't we all love to see that? And speaking of things that we love to see, MS Dhoni played yesterday in, of course, the last group stage match of the IPL 2023 that will, of course, be happening in, let's say, Chennai this year. Now, of course, we know for a fact that Chennai may not actually be playing, they could very well be playing more matches in Chepauk because, again, they're very much in the hunt for a spot in the playoffs. And not just that, the qualifier one and the eliminator will be held in Chepauk. So you could see CSK, in fact, be playing some more matches at Chennai. But their match against KKR, which unfortunately they ended up losing, was their last match of the group stages of the IPL 2023 in Chennai. And fans were clearly keen to give Dhoni a very, very good send-off because right after the match, when Dhoni was actually lining up for his interview, or let's say question and answer interaction with the broadcasters, he actually couldn't hear anything the broadcasters were saying because the cheers from the fans were just so loud. In fact, the TV visuals actually caught Dhoni leaning down and turning up the volume of the device in which he could hear Simon Dool and the others who were talking to him. He had to turn up the volume because the crowd were chanting Dhoni, Dhoni so loudly that he couldn't hear anything. He turned up the volume. Thereafter, he could hear, and thus he was able to give that interview which he normally is supposed to give to the broadcasters. But it does speak volumes about the kind of love that fans have for Dhoni that he was unable to hear even the commentators when they were talking to him in a earpiece. Sticking with cricket news, but moving our focus on to international cricket. And if you're a fan of English cricket and you want a good Ashes series, well, this news is not really for you. James Anderson has suffered a bit of a minor groin injury in his right-sided groin with just about a month really to go before the Ashes begin. Now, of course, his fitness isn't, he's not ruled out of anything yet, and his fitness is going to be monitored even ahead of that one-off test which they'll be having against Ireland. But if you're an England fan, you'd remember that in 2019, there was a rather similar situation which took place. He got injured during a county game and then was only able to bowl 4 overs at the test at Edgbaston, before he had to unfortunately pull out of the match, and Australia ended up getting a rather comprehensive victory in that particular match. They were going to want to avoid that, so best case scenario would be they treat the injury, maybe don't have him play as much, and ensure that he's in the best of shape come, of course, that test against Ireland and then the Ashes. Fingers crossed. I mean, I, for one, am definitely excited to see Anderson in home conditions, getting that Duke's ball to dance. But hey, let's see what happens. Fingers crossed, it's nothing too serious. Switching our focus now from the world of cricket to the world of football, and Barcelona have finally been crowned the champions of La Liga. They did so after a 5-2 rout of their local rivals Espanyol. Unfortunately, the post-match was, let's say, marred by some rather ugly scenes, because whilst Barcelona players were celebrating on the pitch because they not just won the match, they had sealed the championship. Well, some Espanyol fans actually ended up charging out and confronting the Barca players. In fact, it forced the Barca players to rush off the field to avoid any confrontation. And there's no real place for anything of that sort in any sport, really. I get that, some people were saying that they were being disrespectful to Espanyol, but I don't see that, because they were celebrating the fact that they had won the title. So there's not really much which you can do in that regard beyond just, celebrating on the field. Of course, you'd want to be celebrating. You've just won your first title in 4 seasons. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of celebration. Definitely a lot wrong with fans charging on to the field looking to physically harm the players. And speaking of titles, the Premier League title race was very hot until recently, but 2 results mean that it's pretty much all but over at this point. The first of those was that Manchester City beat Everton 3-0. What that did was it gave them a buffer of sorts, because again, remember, they still have 1 game in hand. And so Arsenal really needed to win their last game if they were to have any hope of actually ensuring that the title fight could stretch out till the last day. Unfortunately, Arsenal, well, they ended up getting stunned 3-0 by Brighton and Hove Albion. What that means is that right now City, despite having played 1 game less, have a 4-point advantage. And what that also means is that if Manchester City win their next fixture in the Premier League, which is against Chelsea, they'll have a 7-point lead, which means mathematically it's impossible to catch them, and the Manchester City will be crowned champions. Now, we'll be doing some more detailed videos on all of these news stories and just later on, when of course I am in office, and we'll be analyzing all of these matches, because again, for Arsenal, the second half of the campaign is really petered out. It's fallen off a cliff, really, because they were very good in the first half. Second half, though, they probably dropped way too many points, whereas City have finally found that gear, which is what defined them really as champions over the past few years. So, interesting times, really. But if you're an Arsenal fan, I can understand the disappointment. You guys did well, but in the end, that little bit, that last push was probably just missing. Switching our focus now from the world of football to the world of tennis, and there's some interesting happenings in the Madrid Open right now. The Madrid Open is the last proper ATP and WTA Tour event that will be taking place before, of course, the French Open. And the big seeds are doing pretty well. In fact, Novak Djokovic beat Grigor Dimitrov 6-3, 4-6, and 6-1 to make it into the round of 16. And even more encouraging for fans of Joker was the fact that in the last round, he had been playing with an elbow brace of sorts, because he had just recovered from an elbow injury. This match against Dimitrov, he wasn't using the elbow brace, which means that his elbow is pretty much good to go. So it's good news, really, considering that, and it's good news for tennis in general, because again, it seems very unlikely we're going to see Rafael Nadal in this year's edition of the French Open. And you need all the star power, really, that you can get, and having Djokovic around guarantees you that at the very least. Speaking of star power, another one of the tennis world's top stars, Iga Swiatek, also breezed through into the round of 16 of the Madrid Open on the women's side of the draw. She beat Lesia Sarenko 6-2 and then a bagel 6-0. So tennis's big stars clearly gearing up for the French Open. I, for one, very excited. I'm not really a big fan of the massive break that happens between Grand Slams, where you have Australian Open at the beginning of the year, then the French Open comes a few months later. Not even like 1 or 2 months, more than a few months, because it's, January is Australian Open, and now it's going to be May when, of course, the other Grand Slam, second Grand Slam of the year begins. But definitely excited for it. I don't know about you guys. If you are, you can let us know in the comments. For now, though, I am ending this video. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you enjoy our work over here at Sports Today, please don't forget, like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, leave us a comment. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Don't forget to download the SportsTech app as well, so you can get all of these news updates at the tip of your fingers. And also stay tuned to the channel. So today we'll be bringing you lots of updates, analysis, and the likes from the world of sport. But for now, from my side, goodbye.